The smell of burnt coffee hit me first. Then came the silence. It was my 43rd birthday. No card, no happy birthday. Just an empty chair across the kitchen table and a cold plate of eggs I'd made for two. I sat there alone, staring at the spot where she used to smile. Lauren didn't forget my birthday. She just didn't care anymore. Not about the breakfast, not about the marriage, not about me. And I wish I could say that was the worst part. But that morning was just the beginning. This isn't one of those stories where the guy gets angry and flips a table. No, this is about the slow, steady realization that the woman you built your life around has been lying to your face for months, maybe years, and how far she's willing to go to bury you when she thinks you won't fight back. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, tell me where you're from, because what comes next, you won't see it coming. From that quiet kitchen, I did what I always do. I went to work. I'm Jack Sawyer, 43, owner of Sawyer Electronics and Repair on Main. I fix busted coffee makers, stubborn dryers, TVs that only show green, small town stuff in Harbor Falls. I like things with screws and schematics because they make sense. You find the bad part, you swap it, it hums again. Simple. I'm not flashy. I keep my head down, open at 9, close when the last job's done. There's a dent in my toolbox from moving it in '09 and a shop stool that knows my lower back better than any doctor. Guys my age come in to talk ball, ask about a part, or just stand in the hum of the bench light because it feels safe. That day, I tried to let the work steady me, but every repaired toaster felt like a lie, and every quiet minute gave my thoughts too much room. I met Lauren when rent was cheap, and we thought takeout counted as fine dining. She was sharp, ambitious, the kind who could turn chaos into a color-coded plan. Somewhere along the promotions, the heels got higher, and the calendar got packed. I respected it, still do. Success costs something. But the warmth that used to hang in our living room got replaced by silent checklists and small corrections. Use coasters. Don't wear those boots on the rug. I already ate. She didn't raise her voice. She just raised walls. I told myself it was a season, that all marriages have them. We'd find our way back after this big project, after this quarter, after this year. The problem with after is it keeps moving. And lately, when she smiled, it felt like I'd earned a B- on a test I didn't know we were taking. Then Grant Dalton strolled back into our lives, like an ad you didn't ask for and can't skip. Old college flame, now a real estate hotshot with a red BMW and a handshake that lasted a second too long. He talked in slogans, markets on fire, I close what I chase, and he laughed loud at his own jokes. The first time I saw them together at a neighborhood thing, there was a charge I couldn't name. Not love, performance. Like two people facing a camera only they could see. He called me bro and clapped my shoulder, the way guys do when they want to remind you whose arena you're in. I told myself I was being petty, but the gut knows. It always does. You can ignore a flickering light for a while. Then one day, the breaker trips, and you're standing in the dark, wondering how long it's been bad. So on my birthday morning, when Lauren said she had a client thing at Harborview and dropped Grant's name like it was a normal Tuesday, I swallowed the stone in my throat. She promised we'd make it up tomorrow, which is married people code for don't push this. I nodded, because arguing about your own birthday feels like begging. She kissed my cheek, businesslike, and the heels I once loved to hear on our hardwood sounded like a clock running out. I could have called her out right there. But you learn over 20 years, that some fights only serve the story the other person's trying to sell. I told her to have a good day. She said, "Don't wait up." The door clicked, and the house exhaled like it was relieved I didn't make a scene. I rinsed 2 plates and only needed 1. I threw myself into the shop, thinking noise would drown it out. Mrs. Patterson's microwave kept tripping. Easy fix. Door switch. Mr. Keegan joked about the lions and left me a tip in the jar that said coffee. I smiled, but it felt borrowed. I've always prided myself on being steady. Show up, do decent work, don't make drama. That afternoon, I caught myself wiping a countertop that was already clean just to keep my hands moving. The phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "Running late again. Love you." I stared at the words until they blurred, like a sticker on a truck that survived too many winters. Love used to be something we did, not something you text from a different table. I closed early, told myself steak would help. I seasoned 2 out of habit, then wrapped one for tomorrow. It sat in the fridge beside a cake I didn't cut. One late night is nothing. A string of them is a pattern. Girls' night, new perfume, face down phone, the gym bag that stayed in the trunk, gas receipts from the other side of town. I'm not a jealous man. I've seen enough life to know people need space. But space isn't secrecy, and when someone starts narrating your flaws to friends, he's controlling. He's too set in his ways. You feel it in rooms you're not in. The guys at the shop heard whispers. May at the tavern asked if I was doing okay, in that soft way bartenders save for folks about to spill. I wasn't ready to spill. A man reaches a point where he stops apologizing for noticing what he notices. I started writing down times, not to win a fight, to stop gaslighting myself. Once you start counting, memory joins in. I thought about the apartment with the crooked blinds, the first Christmas tree that leaned, the day we signed for the house and celebrated with cheap champagne and pizza on the floor. I thought about refinishing the hardwood last summer while she worked late, and how proud I felt when the grain shone in the morning light. I thought about how often I'd made peace by being quiet. My dad used to say, "You don't have to swing to win. Sometimes you win by not taking the bait." It's good advice for bar fights and bad advice for a marriage that's bleeding out. There's a difference between being patient and getting benched. And I had benched myself for years, calling it love. So I called Tyler, my 25-year-old assistant, who still believes in straight talk and giving a damn. I told him I needed a favor that felt wrong but necessary. Drive by Harborview Grill around 7. If you see Lauren with anyone, just tell me. I laid ground rules. No photos, no hero moves, stay across the street, keep it clean. I hated myself for asking. I hated that I didn't trust my own house enough to ignore it. But truth beats guessing, and guessing was eating me alive. Tyler didn't judge. "I got you, boss," he said, like we were troubleshooting a board, not a marriage. I hung up and realized my hands were shaking. Not rage, relief. Whatever he found, I'd be done living between maybe and denial. Waiting is its own fight. A man's pride wants action. Slam a door, make a speech, draw a line. But pride doesn't pay court costs, and it sure doesn't fix what's broken. I sat on the back porch with a beer and a notebook, wrote the date and the time like I was logging a service call. I promised myself 3 things. I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't touch a thing that wasn't mine, and I wouldn't give anyone a story to use against me. My father's voice again. "Keep your head. Let the facts talk." The sun slid behind Harbor Falls, that soft blue hour where the town goes quiet, and I could hear the lake like a clock. Tyler's text buzzed at 7:12. I stared at the screen and breathed, steadying the leash on my pride, ready to read what I already knew. At 7:12, Tyler's message lit the screen like a flare. "She's at Harborview Grill, not with the girls, with Grant. Patio table holding hands." I read it twice, even though once was enough. Harborview's the place couples pick when they want to be seen, but not caught. String lights, lake breeze, easy to mistake a lie for romance. Tyler added, "I'm across the street. They're laughing." That word, laughing, landed heavier than any accusation. I pictured the menu we'd shared on anniversaries, the corner table where we once argued about nothing and made up over pie. I didn't rage text. I didn't call. I put the phone face down on the table and listened to the fridge hum. A man knows when he's been beaten in the small moments long before the big one. It's the way silence starts to feel polite. I told Tyler, "Thanks. Head home." Then I sat there, not moving, letting the whole thing land without trying to cushion it. But the mind doesn't keep still. It runs a film you never asked to watch. I saw her hand on his forearm, fingers resting like they belong there. I saw him lean in, the grin I'd already learned to hate, the showman's tilt that says, "Look at me." My chest felt hollow, not hot. There's a difference. Rage burns. Grief echoes. Guys my age know that echo, the one that shows up when your kid moves out, or a doctor calls you back in for a quick follow-up. I rubbed the groove in my wedding ring and looked at the door like a dog waiting for a master who already left. I thought about walking in, about letting the patio hear what I had to say. Then I heard my father again. "You can win the room and lose the war." So I stayed put and let the room be empty, because sometimes the only way through is quiet. Still, quiet doesn't mean blind. If I was going to carry this, I wanted facts. not guesses. I took the long way past Harborview, windows up, radio low. From the street you can see the patio, reflections dancing on the glass. I slowed at the light like any tired man looking for a parking spot. There they were, two heads close, one flicker of candlelight, one wine glass turning in her hand. She touched her hair the way she does when she's selling a point. He nodded like he'd bought it with house money. I didn't park. I kept rolling, caught the next green, and let the scene shrink in my mirror. Back at the shop, I wrote the time down, not to build a case against her, yet, but to build a case for my sanity. People will tell you you imagined it. A notebook won't. I made coffee I didn't drink and waited for the night to admit what it was. When I finally went home, the house had that neat, staged quiet. Throw pillows fluffed, diffuser still working overtime. Her laptop sat on the kitchen counter, lid half open like it had been in a hurry and forgot to lie. I stared at it the way you stare at a closed door in a dark hallway. I don't snoop. It's a rule I've kept even when it hurt. But rules assume both people are playing the same game. I breathed, counted to 10, and lifted the lid. The login was muscle memory, same as it had been for years. Desktop neat, folders named like a resume. Work, taxes, photos. One near the bottom caught my eye. Travel plans. We don't travel much, not lately. My hand hovered. I heard the little voice. Don't. Then a louder one. Enough. I clicked. When deception wants to be found, it doesn't hide. It labels itself and waits for you to stop pretending. The folder bloomed open into a row of dates and thumbnails. Restaurants we'd never tried together. A cabin by the water I didn't recognize. Hotel room mirrors catching two figures too close. Lauren in lingerie I'd never seen. The kind she'd once called silly. Their smiles weren't the kind you send to family. They were the private kind. The after midnight kind. Each photo had a timestamp, tidy as an invoice. 3 months. Long enough to build a rhythm. Short enough to pretend it's not that serious. I clicked through until the numbness set in. That steady, clinical feeling you get when you're changing a flat in the rain. Cold, focused, efficient. I stopped on one where she's laughing with her eyes shut. The laugh I thought was ours. I should have closed the laptop. I didn't. I scrolled lower into messages I wasn't looking for but couldn't not read, hoping for some sane explanation that never came. Soon you won't have to wonder anymore, he wrote. Just a little longer and we'll do this right. Her reply came dressed as promise. He's clueless. It's almost sad. There it was. Proof that my doubts weren't poison. They were medicine I'd refused to take. More lines, casual and cruel. Weekends at her sister's. Lunch breaks that stretched. We should be careful. Followed by pictures that said they weren't. I read until the letters blurred and the page felt like it was tilting. Men don't mind losing a race we knew we entered. We mind being laughed at from the finish line. The worst part wasn't that she wanted someone else. It was the way she had rewritten me in their private theater. The bumbling husband, the soft target, the man too dim to notice the lights going out. I closed my eyes and felt the life we built shift like a house settling after a storm. Then I saw it, the plan behind the affair. Not just leaving, framing. My lawyer says emotional abuse is hard to prove, she typed. But if I can document he's controlling, money, friends, maybe even a bruise. My thumb froze on the trackpad. Grant answered like this was business. Do what you need to. He'll look unstable. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Counting the slow tick of the vent fan. Breakups are ugly. But this was character assassination with a calendar. They weren't just tossing me aside. They were building a version of me the town could hate and a judge could punish. I thought about my customers who hand me their broken things because they trust I'll do right by them. I thought about the boys who work for me and the way gossip sticks in a small place like Harbor Falls. I stopped reading. I started saving. Truth deserves backups. Shock wants you scattered. I went the other way. Screenshots, file copies, dates, times, names. Methodical as lining up screws on a towel so none go missing. I saved to a flash drive, then another, printed the worst of it because paper is a stubborn witness. I made a list of places and people, Harborview, that cabin, the hotel, anyone who'd seen them together. It sounds cold to say it, but once you accept the floor has dropped, you stop trying to float. You build. I bagged the drives in a sandwich bag like evidence, labeled them with a Sharpie, and tucked them into the toolbox drawer where I keep the good bits, fuses, thermal paste, things that fix the things no one sees. The house was still. The clock over the stove clicked another minute forward like nothing had changed. I washed my hands and they smelled like printer ink and steel. Right on cue, her name lit the screen. Girls' night ran long. Don't wait up. The casual cheer in her voice scratched like sandpaper. I looked at the laptop, still open to a life I didn't recognize, and answered anyway. You okay? I asked, as if the script still mattered. She sighed, just right, said Miranda was dealing with drama, said she'd make it up to me tomorrow. I let her talk, not to catch her, but to hear how much of me she believed I still was. We make it easy for liars when we're too proud to admit we've been lied to. I said I was fine. She asked if I was mad. I stood at the sink, finger tracing the groove where the sponge rests, and felt the weight of 20 years on my tongue. People think anger is loud. Real anger is a quiet door you choose not to open. I'm not mad, I said, steady. I'm disappointed. And the words surprised me by how true they felt. Mad is quick. Disappointment lingers. It lives in the space between who you thought you were and who you are right now, standing in your own kitchen like a guest. She paused, then laughed lightly. Deflection, the kind you use on a clerk when the coupon's expired. Don't be dramatic, she said. We'll celebrate tomorrow. I pictured that folder, the timestamps, the jokes at my expense. Sure, I told her, and let the promise hang where it belonged. After we hung up, I closed the laptop and slid it back exactly how I'd found it. Then I wrote one more line in the notebook. Tonight, the story changed. Not because I yelled, not because I caught them at a table, because I chose the long game, the one where truth takes its time, but it doesn't miss. After I chose the long game, I packed a duffel and left the house quiet. Pinecrest Motor Lodge isn't much. Thin towels, a humming ice machine, a TV that leans, but it's neutral ground. The clerk slid a key across the counter like he'd seen this story before. Men my age know the feel of a cheap room. The lamp you tighten by hand, the AC that rattles, the bedspread with a pattern meant to hide stains and memories. I set my bag down and stood there, listening to the room breathe. There's a dignity in starting from zero. No framed photos, no wedding china, no expectations. I opened the little notepad by the phone and wrote the date. Same pen I use at the shop. New file, new page. I wasn't running. I was stepping back far enough to see the whole picture. Some problems you can't fix on the kitchen counter. You need space, a door that locks, and a plan. From that motel desk, I decided what kind of man I was going to be for the next stretch. Not a doormat, not a headline, a witness. I laid it out in plain words. Investigate, document. Don't provoke. Protect the business. Protect myself. Guys like us don't love paperwork, but paperwork can save your hide when talk turns ugly. I made a list of places, a list of names, a list of lies I could already prove. I thought about lawyers and bank passwords and how fast a rumor can outrun the truth in a town like ours. I don't have a badge or a cape. I have a toolbox and common sense. My dad used to say, if you can't stop the leak, at least find the shutoff valve. That was the plan. Close the valves, stack the facts, and let time do the heavy lifting. I slept in my boots that night, just in case. Morning brought coffee that tasted like cardboard and resolve that tasted better. I headed to Mayo Sullivan's Tavern because bars at 10 a.m. are churches for people who've had the week I'd had. May poured without asking and gave me the look older sisters give little brothers who finally admit they're in trouble. I didn't say much. She did. Honey, people talk. They've seen her at Harborview with Mr. Shiny Teeth. Thought you knew. There's a sting when a stranger knows your marriage better than you do. In small towns, the walls have ears and the ears have Facebook. She slid a napkin over. On it, she'd scribbled dates, places, the kind of details bartenders collect like tips. It hurt. It also helped. You're not crazy, May said. You've been kind. I took a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The world didn't tilt. It leveled. Kindness is good. Clarity is better. Clarity brought a side dish I didn't order. May leaned in, voice low. She's been saying you're controlling, that you watch her phone, choke the money, scare her friends. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so neat. A picture painted with colors that stain fast. Every man who pays the bills and asks a hard question becomes controlling in the wrong mouth. I thought about the times I'd said, text me when you get there, and how easily that could be twisted into a cage. Men know this dance. If you care, you're clingy. If you don't, you're cold. You need to get ahead of that, May said. Folks remember the first version they hear. She wasn't wrong. Reputation is a slow build and a quick burn. I finished my coffee and tasted the ashes of someone else's story sitting in my name. That was gonna change. May said it plain. Fight fire with fire. Where I'm from, that doesn't mean lie better. It means stop playing nice with the truth. I told her I wouldn't be the guy on the patio flipping tables. She nodded. Good, be the guy with the receipts. So I laid it out. Photos, timestamps, witnesses, the bruise she staged. May tapped the bar. Then you stack it. You stay calm. You let her run hot while you run cool. Men in their 40s learn that lesson in other places. On a factory line, in a budget meeting, coaching Little League. The loudest dad doesn't win the game. The one keeping score does. I slid cash under the cup and stood up taller than I'd felt in days. Fighting fire with fire for me would be this. No yelling, no rumor, no mess. Just facts, perfectly lined, handed to the right people at the right time. You learn a lot about a man by watching him work. Grant's office sat in the shiny part of downtown. Glass front, chrome handles, fake plants that never die. I parked across the street like any other guy eating a sandwich on his lunch break and watched the show. He greeted clients with that salesman lean, the kind that steals inches without asking. His red BMW idled like a flex, vanity plate winking in the sun. He checked his reflection in every window. People who need mirrors that badly often need witnesses too. I wasn't there to be either. I was there to learn his rhythm, arrivals, lunches, when he left the office, when he came back looking smug. It wasn't jealousy, it was recon. The same way I'd watch a circuit to see where it heats up before it fails. People have hotspots. Find them, and the rest starts to make sense. Late afternoon, I swung by Harborview Towers, the pricey building where Grant plays king. Parking garage was open. I didn't touch a thing. I just walked like I belonged, counting spots. His BMW sat in 47, shiny as ever. Next to it, an empty slot with a dark bloom on the concrete. Fresh oil. I crouched without crouching. The way you do when you're tying a shoe that doesn't need tying. That stain was a signature anyone in a shop would recognize. Lauren's Lexus had been seeping for months. A slow leak she waved off whenever I offered to fix it. Oil tells the truth. It drips where a car sleeps. I snapped a photo wide enough to show both spaces and the numbers. Didn't need her plate. The stain was enough. Little things like that don't scream. They whisper, and whispers collected turn into a choir a judge can hear. Back at the shop, I called Tyler. Remember your buddy Jake? The phone whiz. Every man knows a kid who can resurrect a drowned iPhone and a dead hard drive. Tyler looped him in, and we met after hours at his strip mall store, the kind that sells cases and fixes mistakes. Jake had careful hands and the kind of focus you only see in surgeons and kids who build PCs from scratch. We can recover deleted stuff, he said, if the memory's intact. Legal. It's our account, our plan, our bill. Marriage is messy. Contracts aren't. I handed over the old device she'd accidentally retired after that mysterious spill last month. I need photos, messages, call logs, everything. Jake nodded without the drama, just a craftsman seeing a job. Men like that are good to have when the ground shifts. They don't ask why. They ask what format you want the evidence in. On my way back to Pinecrest, the phone buzzed. Working late. Don't wait up. Love you. The words felt like they were mass-produced, stamped out by a machine that never met me. I pulled into the motel lot and let the engine tick cool. There's a moment after the day you stop translating. You hear the sentence and accept it for what it is, not what it used to mean. I stared at that love you, the way you stare at a sign that used to point home and now points nowhere. Then I laughed once, short and mean, because sometimes the body vents before the mind catches up. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down, the way I had when Tyler texted me the truth, and listened to the AC rattle. In the cheap light of that room, I decided her borrowed phrases would live without a reply. Momentum matters, so I kept mine. I called May and asked if she was hungry. Always, she said. We met at Harborview Grill. The same patio, the same string lights, the same lake, pretending it didn't know any secrets. We took a table inside with a clean view, two friends eating meatloaf and watching a movie that had stopped being romantic. Lauren and Grant arrived right on time, hands close, heads closer. They didn't see us. People rarely do when they're admiring their own reflection. May cut her steak and talked about nothing, weather, leagues, a fundraiser, for my sake, I think, to keep me from narrating the scene out loud. I didn't need to. The picture had already been taken, stain in a garage, laughter under lights, messages in a folder, a town that keeps score. I paid the bill and walked out calm. If truth was a fuse, I'd just measured its length. Leaving Harborview with May, I looped the block once more and saw them on the patio, framed by string lights like a postcard you'd send a stranger. Lauren's hand rested on Grant's sleeve. His thumb traced lazy circles on her wrist. After everything I'd learned, the scene didn't knock the wind out of me. It confirmed it. I stayed in the dark edge of the lot, engine off, windows cracked, the way you wait out a summer storm from the garage. I didn't walk in. I didn't make a speech. A man can set his own trap by chasing the wrong moment. Instead, I watched for the small tells, the angle of her shoulders, the way he scanned the room to see who was watching. People in love forget the world. Performers never do. When the server set down dessert with 2 spoons, I checked the time, let the lights blur, and reminded myself, keep your powder dry. Back at Pinecrest, I opened the notebook that had become my lifeline and wrote it all down. Date, time, who, where, what they ordered, how long they stayed, when they touched. It felt cold, but cold beats crazy when folks start trading stories. I started a folder on my phone just for this, snapping wide shots of Harborview, the parking lot, the clock on the dash. No sneaking up close, no drama, just proof that could stand on its own feet. In a small town, gossip runs fast and righteous. Facts walk slower, but they finish the race. I printed a few screenshots at the 24-hour place by the highway, paid cash, and tucked them behind the motel Bible because some habits die hard. By midnight, I had a clean trail a lawyer could follow and a calm I hadn't felt in days. You sleep better when your story has receipts. That calm only held till morning, when a number I didn't recognize popped up. Name's Joel Hendricks, the voice said, careful, tired. We met once at your wife's holiday thing. At her office. He asked for coffee, insisted we keep it low-key. Quiet men get my attention. They're the ones who've learned to measure their words. We met at Main Street Coffee, back table, 2 mugs that tasted like burnt hope. He didn't waste time. I shouldn't be in this, he said, but I watched something I can't pretend I didn't see. His eyes kept shifting to the door like he'd trained himself to anticipate trouble. Guys my age recognize that look. It's the cousin of flinch you bring home from rough years. He slid a thumb drive across the table like it might bite. Before you watch it, you should know this isn't about you being right. It's about her being wrong. I waited to plug the drive in till I was back at Pinecrest. Curtains drawn, that lopsided TV humming in the corner. Joel's file opened on a grainy clip from a supply room camera. Metal shelves, boxes, a sharp edge waiting. Lauren walked in alone, rolled up her sleeve, and pressed her arm against the shelf. Once. Twice. Harder the 3rd time. Then she breathed fast, checked her phone, and held the mottled skin up like a trophy. My stomach dropped in a slow, steady way, the kind that stays. You don't want that kind of proof. You take no joy in it. It drains the color from every memory you thought was safe. I paused, rewound, forced myself to watch again to make sure my eyes weren't inventing things to survive. They weren't. There it was. The plan caught in unkind light. Not just betrayal. Construction. A bruise built like a story she could sell. Joel had labeled everything. Timestamps, office logs, a short note that said the footage auto-deletes in 30 days if nobody pulls it. He'd pulled it. Chain of custody matters, he'd told me. If this ever goes to court. I slid the drive into a Ziploc, wrote the date with a Sharpie, and tucked it into the same drawer as the other proof. I took a breath that felt like it belonged to someone else. Evidence doesn't heal you. It just stops you from getting gaslit into thinking your pain is imaginative. Out the window, the motel pool sat covered, belly up for the season. That was my marriage. Water gone, shape still there, a sign that used to say no diving, guarding a hole nobody wanted anymore. I shut the notebook and stared at the ceiling, hearing the room's old springs settle like a verdict. Now I had something that wouldn't blink. When I met Joel again to thank him, the man finally let his guard down. She targeted me at work after I wouldn't cover for her, he said, voice barely above the hum of the espresso machine. Claims I made comments. I didn't. HR believed her until the cameras did the math. He rubbed his wrist like an old sprain. You see that in men who've been accused of things they didn't do, this instinct to hide their hands. I'm not a hero, he added. I'm just tired of being afraid of people who lie better than I tell the truth. I knew that fatigue like I knew my own reflection. It's the kind that doesn't sleep, just powers down for short stretches. I paid for his coffee, gripped his shoulder, a simple thanks men use when words feel thin, and promised I'd keep his name quiet. He nodded, relieved and ashamed of the relief. Walking back to the truck, it hit me like cold air. This wasn't just my private hell. Lauren didn't trip and fall into bad choices. She walked there and brought company. May with her napkin timeline, Joel with his footage, Tyler watching me try to hold the line at the shop, even the cop who'd called earlier, careful with his words like he was handling glass. We were a string of people who'd brushed against a story she needed to be true, each of us cut a different way. Men in their 40s and 50s learn this. Some damage you can fix with a wrench, some you fix by not letting it spread. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me responsible. If I had proof, I owed the truth to more than my pride. Harbor Falls remembers. Give it something worth remembering. That night, my phone lit up with her name just past 10, the time married people used to call to say goodnight. "Where are you?" she asked, cheerful like a radio host. "House feels weird." I told her I was taking space, that I'd be in touch when we could talk with clear heads. Silence stretched, then a sharper tone. "Are you avoiding me?" There it was, the pivot from sweet to suspicious, the way someone reaches for a lever that used to move you. I let the quiet do its work. Men are trained to fill silence with explanations that become rope. I said, "We'll talk soon." She asked if I was coming home. "Not tonight." She wanted a reason she could bend into something ugly. I gave her none. The line went flat for a beat. "You're scaring me," she said, and I heard the word scaring file itself away for later use. "Space," I answered, slow and even, "isn't punishment. It's a boundary." I wanted the words on record, even if the record was just my own spine hearing itself. She exhaled, more irritation than fear, and tossed out a few baited hooks. "We could work this out. You're overreacting. You know how you get." Years ago, those lines worked. They turned me into the apologizer, the fixer, the man grateful to be invited back into his own life. Not this time. "Get some rest," I said. "We'll schedule a conversation." Scheduling a conversation is what grown-ups do when they mean business. The call ended with that dull click that tells you you've taken away a toy. I set the phone down like it might bite and wrote 2 words in the notebook. Stay steady. Pride wants fireworks. Survival prefers dimmer switches. The next morning, with coffee as black as the motel clock, I looked over the file. Photos, times, the oil stain, the patio, the footage, the text messages that cut deep and clean. I whispered it to the empty room first to hear how it sounded in air. Game on, Lauren. Not a threat. A declaration. I wasn't chasing anymore. I wasn't begging for honesty from someone invested in the opposite. I was going to walk the slow, boring road that wins. Police reports filed right, accounts secured, a lawyer chosen for spine not charm, every encounter documented like a service ticket. Men my age don't need revenge. We need our names back. I tucked the folder into my duffel, tightened the laces on boots that had seen worse winters, and stepped into a day that finally had a plan. If truth was a fuse, the match was lit. Now all I had to do was keep my hand steady. With the match lit, Lauren did what people do when they smell smoke coming their way. She pointed at me and yelled, "Fire!" Overnight, the town grew a new story. I was controlling. I was unstable. I'd cut her off and threatened her friends. You could hear it in the way clerks paused before handing me change, in the 2 bright smiles from folks who suddenly needed both hands for their phones. Harbor Falls runs on casseroles and rumors, and she served hers hot. A buddy texted that Grant had been warning people about me at the gym. Cute. I didn't push back. I stocked shelves. I fixed a toaster. I kept my head down and let the lies circle like crows that always tire before noon. Then my phone rang with a number I knew and a tone I didn't. Officer Rankin sounded like a man walking a wet floor, careful, steady, choosing each step before he took it. "Jack, I need you to come by the station Rankin said, voice neutral like he was reading a weather report. She's alleging you've threatened her. That word, alleging, hits different when it's attached to your name. I could hear paper shuffling, the kind that becomes a file if you let it. I told him I'd be there in 20, then sat in the truck a minute, breathing through the old instinct to defend myself to a dial tone. Men my age know this drill from other places. HR meetings, the principal's office, a neighbor's complaint about a fence. You don't win by talking fast. You win by bringing slower things, dates, times, facts that don't wobble. At the station, Rankin gave me the look you say for someone you grew up with, who's today a Mr. Bring what you have, he said. All of it. I nodded. You'll want a new folder, I told him. This one's going to be thick. I laid it out in order, like parts on a towel. Photos with timestamps, wide shots showing places, the oil stain in 47 beside Grant's BMW, the laptop messages that stopped being private once they started being cruel. Then the crown jewel, the supply room footage Joel had pulled before the system could forget. Rankin watched with his hands folded, the way a man listens to a story he'd hoped wasn't true. He paused the video, rewound, made a note, then looked at me like the floor had just leveled under both of us. You've been quiet, he said. On purpose, I answered. I'm not giving her a scene to point at. He nodded, a small mercy. This helps. Help isn't victory, but it's oxygen. I signed what needed signing, dated what needed dating, and felt that rare peace men get when the right person finally sees what you've been carrying alone. Before I left, Rankin gave the kind of advice that sounds basic till you need it. Document everything. Don't get provoked. He said it twice like he was tightening lug nuts. No surprise visits. If she calls, keep it short. If she shows up, call us. And Jack, no texts you wouldn't want read in court. It wasn't a lecture. It was a lifeline. Guys our age know how fast a sharp sentence can undo months of steady living. I promised him I'd treat every minute like it had a microphone in it. He smiled, faint and tired. Most folks don't, he said. I walked out into the kind of afternoon that makes small towns look honest. Flags moving, sprinklers tick-ticking, somebody grilling 2 yards over. The world didn't change for my crisis. It never does. I got in the truck, wrote down the time, and went back to the plan like a man finishing a roof before it rains. That evening, Jake called from his counter under buzzing fluorescent lights. I got into the old phone, he said. There's a lot. I drove over and watched him move through screens like a surgeon, steady hands, no flourish. Messages bloomed in threads I recognized and wished I didn't. Lauren and Miranda brainstorming like they were prepping a bake sale. Dates matched the nights I'd eaten alone, the afternoons I'd convinced myself I was paranoid. You want exports? Jake asked. Everything, I said, twice. He gave me that look young men give older ones when they learn our quiet isn't emptiness, it's restraint. He didn't pry. He just did the work and handed me 2 drives and a thick envelope like a man passing tools across a hood. You're not crazy, he offered, which is the kindest sentence a person can say when your life is trying to gaslight you into silence. Back at Pinecrest, I read the lines you don't want to read, or maybe document some bruises. The way you type that and hit send, then go on with your day. That chills you worse than February. Miranda suggested Rickard him when he yells, like I was a storm you could schedule. Lauren wrote about money, friends, passwords, as if basic boundaries were crimes if you name them right. I sat on the edge of that creaky bed and felt the strange calm that comes when horror and clarity shake hands. Men know that feeling from hospital waiting rooms and late-night calls about kids far from home. You stop bargaining. You make lists. I highlighted dates, circled phrases, and tagged the worst of it with sticky notes I'd grabbed from the front desk. Then I did what I'd done every night since the fuse was lit. I breathed until the room shrank back to size. Proof is raw. A case is cooked. I spent the next hour turning screenshots into something a judge could hold. Printed, labeled, in order. No stray edges for a slick lawyer to pick at. Each section got a cover sheet, a fair timeline, fabricated abuse plan, third-party witnesses, physical evidence. It felt like assembling a tool roll, everything in its slot, ready when you need it, nothing rattling. I slid the stack into a binder I'd bought at the drugstore next to a display of sunglasses nobody wants. Then I made copies because paper disappears when fear needs it to. When I was done, I set the binder on the little round table and just looked at it, the way you look at a rebuilt engine before you turn the key. If truth needed a voice, this would be mine. Quiet, organized, patient, the kind men use when they've been underestimated too long. 2 days later, a knock at the shop door came with a manila envelope and a polite face. "You've been served," he said like he was passing a casserole. "Temporary restraining order hearing, Monday, 10 a.m. I signed, thanked him because manners cost nothing, and felt a strange relief. A hearing meant a room where stories had to sit under lights. I called Rankin, I called a lawyer a buddy recommended, the kind who wears scuffed shoes on purpose. Then I closed early and swept the floor like I always do, because routine reminds you you're still you. That night, Lauren called with a softer voice than usual, all worry and perfume. "Can we talk?" she asked. We could, in front of a judge. "We'll handle this properly," I said, and let the silence say the rest. She wanted a private stage. I wanted a record. Monday came with courthouse air, dry, humming, vaguely like old books, and fresh coffee. Lauren sat with a lawyer I didn't know and an expression I did. Perform, pivot, cry on cue. When it was her turn, the words flowed. Controlling, erratic, afraid. Then my lawyer stood, and we didn't grandstand. We walked. Photo, timestamp, caption, oil stain, spot number, phone records, messages between her and Miranda, printed in a font nobody could call fake. Then Joel's clip. A room that had been leaning toward sympathy leaned back into balance. The judge asked careful questions about chain of custody. We answered with real names and dates. I didn't look at Lauren much. I watched the judge watch the evidence, the way I watch a circuit stabilize after a bad connection. When the binder closed, the room felt different. Less fog, more floor. Judge Coleman spoke like a mechanic who's seen every model. "Request denied," she said, clear enough to cut. "And given the evidence presented, this matter is referred to the district attorney for further review, potential false reporting, and perjury." The words didn't make me happy. They made me steady. I thanked the court the way you thank a ref who finally called the foul on the right player. Outside, the sun hit the courthouse steps and made them look cleaner than they were. My lawyer clapped the binder, said we'd keep adding to it, said the slow path had just paid off. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't answer, curious friends, half-informed neighbors. I walked to the truck, put the binder on the passenger seat like a person, and sat a minute with my hands on the wheel. The smear had met a wall. Now the truth would do what it always does when it finally gets a lane. Coming off those courthouse steps, I didn't celebrate. I went back to work. By noon, the first domino hit. Lauren was called into HR and walked out with a box. Word traveled fast. Someone had sent the footage to her bosses along with the messages about documenting bruises. I didn't cheer. I fixed a dishwasher that wouldn't drain and answered a customer's questions about surge protectors. Still, you can feel a shift when truth finally touches ground. Men our age know that sound, the click when a stubborn bolt breaks loose. A buddy from her office texted, "She's out. They're reviewing everything." I set the phone face down and kept soldering, because victory that shows up on a weekday doesn't need a parade. At closing, I sat in the truck a minute longer than usual, hands on the wheel, letting the quiet soak in. Consequences had stepped into the light. I hadn't pushed them there. I'd just stopped standing in their way. The next morning, Harbor Falls woke to a different kind of gossip. Cars out front of Grant's Glass Palace, men in jackets hauling boxes. My cousin sent a photo he shouldn't have, with 3 words, IRS, paperwork everywhere. The town has a special tone for money trouble. It's lower, more certain, like a hymn folks already know. I didn't dance in the aisles. I stocked fuses. May called to say the gym was quiet for once. No Grant speeches about closing deals. People always assume big men fall with a roar. Sometimes it's just the dull thump of a file cabinet landing on a dolly. On my lunch break, I ate in the truck and watched clouds roll off the lake. A year ago, I would have wished this on him. Today, I just noted it. Pride wants you to claim credit you don't deserve. Life was doing its own math. My name wasn't on the chalkboard. When a small town changes its mind about you, it doesn't send a memo. It shows up in handshakes that last longer, in a free coffee slid across a counter, with a look that says, "We were wrong." Harbor Falls has a long memory, but it's fair when you give it something solid. Customers who'd gone quiet came back with busted blenders and apologies tucked inside their stories. Heard some things. Guess I heard the wrong ones. I didn't preach. I tightened screws, said thanks, and kept my voice level. Tyler posted our holiday hours, and the comments weren't snide anymore. They were normal, which felt like a luxury. Even Rankin stopped by on patrol, stood by the counter, and bought a surge strip he didn't need. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said, which is cop for "don't spike the ball." I nodded. Men our age know the rule. Act like you've been in the end zone before. Of course, storms circle back. Around 11, headlights swept Pinecrest's lot like searchlights. Lauren's car door slammed, then another. She and Miranda were loud drunk, the kind of drunk that mistakes volume for courage. They stumbled past my door, knocking like bill collectors, calling my name like a dare. "Come out, Jack! Don't be a coward!" I didn't. I called the desk, then Rankin, the way he told me to. Through the peephole, I watched 2 lives wobble under fluorescent truth. When the cruiser rolled in, the scene shrank fast. Officer Martinez kept it clean. No cuffs, no lecture, just a clear boundary line drawn in motel gravel. Lauren cried the pretty tears. Miranda held her purse and glared at a world that wasn't clapping anymore. I stayed behind the door, heartbeat steady because I'd decided it would be. Men think courage is loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to let someone else's chaos go past you. After they left, I sat on the edge of the bed and read the 3 rules I'd written on the motel notepad. Document everything. Don't get provoked. Protect the business. Rankin hadn't invented them. He'd just reminded me I already knew them. I logged the time, the names, the badge number, the way a mechanic writes down part numbers so the job doesn't get fuzzy later. Then I brushed my teeth, set the phone to do not disturb, and stared at the ceiling till the AC masked the leftover adrenaline. Men our age carry stress like we carry old injuries, quietly, until we don't. So I stretched, drank water, and chose rest on purpose, because a clear head wins hearings and keeps doors from slamming. When sleep came, it wasn't victory, it was maintenance. And maintenance, I've learned, is how you keep the wheels on long enough for justice to catch up. By Saturday morning, the town moved from whispers to screenshots. Someone's anonymous post hit Facebook. Photos we all recognize now, date stamped, the Harbor View patio framed just so. "When your girl's night looks like this," the caption said, and Harbor Falls did what it does. Shared, commented, judged. I didn't hit like, I didn't share. I swept the shop twice and let the feed burn without me. Folks came in with looks that meant well, but carried gasoline. "Saw a thing." They'd start fishing for my version. "Yeah," I'd say, "tough week," and hand them their fixed coffee maker. Men in their 50s know the trap in narrating your pain for an audience that wants a better story, not a truer one. By noon, the comments turned from me to them. Anger at the lies, at the theater, at the audacity. I kept my head down and counted the breaths, till closing. Sunday brought the kind of news you don't rehearse for. Both Lauren and Grant picked up on a separate mess. Insurance fraud tied to that lakeside cabin. Paperwork, signatures, phones that remember numbers people wish they'd forgotten. I learned about it like everyone else. Texts buzzing, May calling with the short version, "They're in it deep." I sat behind the counter and looked at my hands, the same hands that fix other people's broken things, and felt nothing like triumph. Law gets involved when patterns stop being mistakes. I thought about the owner of that cabin, some older woman trusting professionals to do right by her, and I felt the good kind of anger, the kind that points you forward, not back. Tyler locked the front door and flipped the sign, then stood there like a kid who just watched a storm take the roof off the wrong house. "We keep working," I said. "That's our part." That evening, Miranda pulled into the lot alone, eyes swollen, hands twisting a tissue down to threads. She stood in my shop like someone waiting for a verdict. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words came like a dam giving way. How she'd believed Lauren, how she'd pushed the lie, how it felt to realize you were the chorus in a song that hurt good people. Men our age aren't built for public tears, but we know honest regret when we see it. I gave her a chair and a glass of water and didn't rescue her from the silence between sentences. "She uses people," Miranda said finally. "Used me." I nodded. "That's a choice she made," I answered. and a choice you don't have to keep making. She asked what she could do. The question mattered more than any defense she didn't try. I thought about the town, the truth, and the way lies echo. "Tell the truth," I said plain. That's all I ever wanted. Not a campaign, not a post, not a speech with my name in it. Just the same facts in the same order, no perfume on them. She nodded like a person who'd finally reached solid ground and was afraid to move. I walked her to the door, and we stood a second in the soft noise of Harbor Falls. Sprinklers, a dog across the street, a screen door slapping somewhere down the block. Men our age measure endings in those sounds. After she left, I locked up, turned off the bench light, and looked at the empty stool where I've eaten 100 fast dinners. Tomorrow I'd open at 9. There'd be a broken dryer and a weird hum in a TV in a world that keeps turning. The big pieces had started to fall. My job was to stay steady while they did. The bell over my shop door clicks the way it always has. And for the first time in months, it sounds like normal. Coffee steam, solder smoke, a couple of regulars arguing about the game while I swap a bad board for a good one. The binder that carried my whole mess sits closed on the counter. Edges worn, quiet as a kept promise. 20 years of marriage taught me patience. This year taught me something harder. That truth doesn't need me to swing. It takes its time, and then it does the heavy lifting on its own. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in working, sleeping, and being the kind of man my town can look in the eye. If you've ever watched a lie collapse under its own weight, you know this feeling. Steady, not loud. Do me a favor. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and what turned it around for you. Hit subscribe if you want the next chapter. We're not done. We're just finally honest.